It's recording.
There we go.
Yay! Okay. Did you want to say anything before we got going, Kay, or shall I just get started?
I think you're ready to go. It's all
Okay.
yours. Thank
All
you.
all right, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to speak with you all. The Zoom presentations are kind of fun because you can watch from home and wear your slippers, so that's pretty great. Anyway, I am Matthew Dodder. I'm the Executive Director of Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliance, and I want to tell you a little bit about some of my favorite places to go birding in the county. And this is me at Santa Teresa Park, one of my favorite places. And what a lot of people don't know is that I'm known for watching birds and talking about birds and being the executive director here at a bird-related organization. But I also love to draw, and one of my favorite things to draw is birds. So many of the birds that I see, I'll convert them into colored pencil, and I really enjoy that. And that's just something not everybody knows. I work at McClellan Ranch Preserve in Cupertino, and it's one of my favorite places to go birding. A lot of you were there just a couple of weeks ago, I think, and we were watching these feeders, and you can see an oak titmouse there on one of the feeders. Just before I arrived, there were tons of birds, but they kind of scattered when I came by with my camera to shoot them. But this is right outside of our headquarters. And it's where we usually begin field trips because they're always active with lots of birds. But nearby at the end of the parking lot is a trailhead for the Stevens Creek Trail, which leads through a gorgeous grove of sycamore, black walnut, and cottonwood trees. And the creek itself is right off to the left. You can't see it in this picture, but it's there. And this riparian habitat is a really rich location for birds. My favorite spot on the entire trail is this patch of buckeye, and I've photographed this one little section of these trees hundreds of times over the course of the 7 years I've been, this is now my 8th year, been working at the ranch. And I hope to put all these pictures together sometime and sort of create an animation so you can see the trees getting their leaves and then leaves getting larger and finally turning orange and falling off. It's a really wonderful, peaceful spot. I love it. Another one of my favorite spots is Palo Alto Baylands, and that's where many of you have gone with me various times of year. Winter and fall are probably the most exciting times to be there because we have huge numbers of shorebirds. But it's actually spring and summer where we get more species of birds, oddly. And another place I love to bird is just my backyard. My backyard is only 30 feet by 30 feet, and it's dominated by a deck. And yet it has 100 species that have either landed in the garden or flown directly overhead. And I say this because many of you probably have yards bigger and fancier than ours. And yet at my little place, we've had rufous hummingbird, common nighthawk, great horned owl, Cassin's vireo, red crossbill, varied thrush, bald eagle, western screech owl, Townsend's solitaire, barn owl, Wilson's warbler, and the list goes on and on. Many of which were kind of unexpected, but we've been there for now 19 years. So this is a cumulative list, not all these birds on a single day or in a single year. And just to present you with a bland corporate metaphor, Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliance is a three-legged stool supported by education, conservation, and outreach. And before I get really into some of the birding locations I want to spotlight, I want to tell you a little bit about what we do as an organization. To speak about conservation first, we have Shawnee Kleinhaus, our full-time environmental advocate. So she's out there doing research, speaking with policymakers, speaking publicly at city council meetings, advocating for clean water, clean creeks, and healthy green open spaces. So she also argues for the protection of species at risk, like this burrowing owl, one of our signature species. It's critically endangered, and in fact, it's now been given the status of endangered in the West. And we argue for the nighttime conditions for migrating species. That really means dark skies. Birds and many other animals rely on clear, dark skies in order to navigate from place to place. They use everything from the constellations to the magnetic poles of the planet to polarized light and aroma. They use all kinds of things to get from one place to another. And this is animals as widely diverse as bats, moths, deer, elk, and of course all the birds. All those animals really require to have dark skies for their circadian rhythms and also just the safety of traveling from one place to another. We also advocate for urban biodiversity. So we get in on city planning meetings and we talk to them about how do we incorporate a rich, biodiverse plants palette for animals and birds to occupy, beside humans in urban areas. This is really, really important because the more green spaces we have, even small ones like the one in this rendering, this provides home and food and fuel and shelter for lots of wild animals. Now, education, Carolyn Knight, my colleague here, is in a in-class presentation here on bird adaptation. So she goes out to schools in the county. A lot of them are Title I schools, to give presentations in preparation for trips that go outdoors, to take these kids to places like Palo Alto Baylands, where they have their first, I always say, their first meaningful experience with nature, because it's not a playground. It's not sanitized. This is dirt and water and animals and plants that they can touch and smell and experience and watch. This is very different from what a lot of these kids have experienced in the past, and it's extremely important to have kids appreciate nature in its true form. So we take them here to explain the importance of this fragile habitat, the tidal marshlands. And outreach is what we do with our many, many volunteers, where we go out to public festivals, we set up a table, we have some of our volunteers, Steve on the left and Sue and Vivek on the right. They were volunteering both on the board and also to talk to people at the Wildlife Festival we had last October. And we do this many times a year with our volunteers, and they help spread the word about what we do and how they can support us and how they can get involved and how they can take advantage of the resources we provide. Another thing we do is BioBlitzes. This is a public outreach event where many people we've never met will show up, and they'll use iNaturalist to document all the animals and plants, all the life forms they find at a location. So this is good for our large, our broad understanding of an ecology. This is Coyote Valley right here. So we had about 50 people on this day, all documenting the birds, the plants, the mushrooms, the reptiles that they were finding. And that is extremely helpful to our knowledge of these areas, but also gets people really excited about nature, being out there and participating in a large project like this. And as far as education goes, we just wrapped up our annual Birdathon, which is a team-oriented event where teams go out, they seek sponsors, they search for as many birds as they can, and sometimes the support, the pledges that they get are on a per species level, and sometimes it's a flat fee that people will donate to their team. They compete for prizes, but they're really doing is raising money for our education programs. And this year we just surpassed $100,000 with this month-long event. And teams like the Wrong Turns from the Education Committee. They're called the Wrong Turns because they have traditionally gotten lost when they travel from place to place, and they're all part of the Education Committee, which is kind of funny. And they went out on a team and raised several $1,000s for the Birdathon. One of the teams that I put together was Bird Costos, which is an art-oriented Birdathon, where we went out together and we drew birds, as many as we could in the time frame that we had. And we've had photography teams, and we've had bird song teams, sound recording teams, bicycling teams, hiking teams, all working toward the same goal, raising money for our education program. Our adult education includes online classes on a variety of topics, and there are more being added to this archive all the time. These are often classes that I give on various subjects, sometimes bird groups, sometimes seasons or habitats. They're a lot of fun. And our speaker series is famous for inviting artists, authors, researchers, explorers, adventurers, and we just recently had Van Pierzalowski, who is the executive director and founder of the California Bird Atlas Project. And he was explaining to us how all of our eBird data goes into creating a brand new and completely unheard of statewide atlas for California. That'll include all of the breeding bird records for our species. And hopefully, well, already we're making discoveries, birds nesting earlier or in different places than we understood before. So this is incredibly important. And our public field trips, of which many of you have been on already, we have 180 plus of these each year, sometimes as many as 200 a year. Many of these are accessible birding for people with mobility issues. And we have lots of those field trips posted on our website every month. We have several publications, our Birding at the Bottom of the Bay, which I'm going to talk a little bit about today, our Breeding Bird Atlas for just our county, and our checklist, which is revised annually. What I like to talk about is the Avocet, which is our quarterly magazine, which comes out electronically, and then our monthly update, which has field trip announcements and other such things, events, timely events. But what I really wanted to talk about today is our self-guided trips. Back before COVID, when I first joined the Alliance here, 2019, I had an idea to create a series of interlocking guides for different birding zones in the county. Believe it or not, we didn't have anything quite like this. This was a fold-up map which people could take with them, and it would describe the birds that could be seen and where to look for them in our county. And they were divided by different habitats, the 5 zones that I'm going to talk about. But when COVID hit and
Hello, loves.
When COVID hit, we suddenly found ourselves unable to hold our normal field trips. We couldn't meet together, we couldn't bird together. It was frightening and disorienting. And what we decided to do was put all the effort that had gone into those interlocking maps and put it all online. These became the very famous self-guided field trips. Now, our county is 1,304 square miles, and we divided it into the 5 zones that I showed you earlier with the interlocking maps. And we set about writing about our favorite birding hotspots. And this was done by our highly experienced field trip leaders. And I wrote several myself. And I can't tell you how many times I've bumped into people during COVID, when we were all wearing masks, when we were walking by ourselves, bump into another birder and they'd say, I used your self-guided field trips. I found them so helpful and so reassuring. I felt like I was birding with other people. That's really wonderful to hear. So an example of these self-guided field trips is this one on the Palo Alto Baylands. And of course, we had some of our bilingual docents help us translate these to Spanish, and we're working currently on some Chinese translations as well. And they included everything about how to get there, what to look for, but also what the facilities were like, what the trail conditions were like, how accessible they were for people with mobility issues. Could bicycles be used? Are dogs allowed? Things of that sort. Things that you could find if you looked for each site independently online, but we put it all in one place. And of course, we made a lot of these self-guided trips suitable for wheelchairs or people with other mobility issues. Now, those 6 signature habitats I mentioned before, these are going to look really familiar to many of you. And they're not entirely unique to us, but they're definitely signature for our county. The tidal wetlands, the salt marsh of Palo Alto Baylands and Don Edwards. We'll talk a little bit about the birds that are found there a bit. Rancho San Antonio, and I can't read the first one because it's blocked. Looks like Joseph D. Grant County Park. This is our famous oak savanna, which is a variety of oak trees with widely spaced open grassland in between, and our old growth forest, Stevens Creek Park and Sanborn Park, replete with Doug fir and redwood conifers. And these are some of the signature species that are found in these habitats. These are indicator species, the Ridgway's rail, which is still an endangered species, and yellow-billed magpie, one of our 2 endemic species found nowhere else outside of California, and pileated woodpecker, a deep old-growth woodland woodpecker, huge, crow-sized woodpecker. And there are 3 more signature habitats that I really like to talk about. The chaparral, which is familiar to anybody who's been to Upper Stevens Canyon or Montebello Preserve. It's a low, shrubby growth, primarily coyote brush and chamise and sage, artemisia. And the riparian woodland, which is what you find along creeks like Coyote Creek or Stevens Creek. And the farmland in Coyote Valley. These are our 6 signature habitats, and here are 3 more species that are kind of indicators for the health of those areas. California thrasher in the chaparral, red-shouldered hawk in the riparian area, tricolored blackbird, nearly an endemic, but it does stray into Oregon a little bit. This is a rare species, and we look to its numbers as an indication of the health of an ecosystem. Now, in our county, there are 418 species of birds, and they fall into 65 different families, 182 of which breed in our county. Now, they may have come here from far away in the south, Mexico, Central America, South America, birds coming from south of the equator, if you can imagine, to breed here. And birds coming here.
Is being recorded.
Birds coming here from the far north as well, breeding in the milder climate of us here. Now, these are the 65 families of birds that are found in our county. You'll notice some right away: the pileated woodpecker toward the upper left, the California condor, the great black and white bird with the white triangles on the other wing, Steller's jay, western tanager. Down on the very far right, you'll see a strange brown bird with some ruby red on the throat. This bird has only been here once in the entire history of the county. This is, well, first of all, if you've ever seen Blow Up from 1966, you know the excitement that the researcher had when reviewing this photograph. This picture I showed you came from a trail camera that was set up on Google campus. No human has ever seen this bird in the county, but here it is in a photograph. It's a Siberian ruby throat. Now, that name probably makes you pause. Indeed, this bird does breed in the Old World. The closest breeding birds of the species Siberian ruby throat occur in northeast Russia. And you would imagine correctly that their normal path of southbound migration might take them to Southeast Asia, Thailand, Malaysia. However, this bird seems to have taken a route more like that. There's a name for this phenomenon. It's called mirror misorientation. It's as if the bird has somehow reflected its normal migration onto the exact opposite direction. Now, everyone has wondered about why this occurs. There's no doubt that it does occur, but why does it occur? Is it a mistake? Is the bird's brain somehow backwards, or is it intentional, almost by design? A frontier spirit, a gene that compels the bird to take a different route in the hopes that potentially in the future, it might actually be joined by other birds that make the same sort of frontier miscalculation. In any case, no one really knows for sure, but it is fascinating, and perhaps we'll have another Siberian ruby throat in the future. But as far as I know, no one has actually ever seen the actual bird. It was only seen by camera. So let's take a look at those 5 zones a little bit more closely. We have all mapped out here, our self-guided map. There are ways to navigate through this. You can navigate by winter, fall, by season, in other words. You can use the index and search by name. And when you start to search, you'll see it divided out into different kinds of places like accessible trails, auto tours, biking, birding by bike, etc. Trips in Spanish, and then by region: East Hills, South County, out of county, West Hills, etc. So let's take the first one, Bayfront, which is where many of us have been together in the Palo Alto Baylands in the upper left of this polygon here. And on the page, you can also find the salt ponds. If you've ever wondered what all those ponds are called in Alviso and Sunnyvale, they all have names. And birders really need to know the names of these places. I've cycled around most of these and walked around many others, but it's a lot of walking and a lot of cycling, and it's pretty lonely but wonderful out there. And it's really great to know the names of these if you do plan on ever going out there. The urban areas. Now, these are places that are really accessible. You know, they're paved trails. They're usually level. Places like Lake Cunningham, so you can get to these areas really quickly and easily. There's a great number of birds that can be found here. The West Hills, basically the Santa Cruz Mountains, our side of the ridge. Many trips there. And the South County, which is from Gilroy southward, and that takes us through, from about Morgan Hills south, takes us through a lot of farmland, a lot of different habitat. There's a choke point toward the upper part, so it really could be considered the very south of the urban area, but it's so different in character that we've set it out into a different zone. And finally, the East Hills, probably the least explored of our areas because so much of it is inaccessible. And there are a few out-of-county areas like Merced National Wildlife Refuge and Panoche Valley and Del Puerto Canyon. And I can't remember what the other one is, but these are, Yuba Pass up in the Sierra. These are longer trips, overnight trips. And in fact, I'm leading one to Yuba Pass next week. That's the very top one up there near Truckee. So our aerial of the county here, you see why we divided it into these different zones. We've got the two mountain ridges on the east and west. We've got the bayfront, which is quite different from the urban area in San Jose, and then the farmland in the south. They really partition themselves logically. And what's interesting about the east versus west mountains is that the trees that occur in the Santa Cruz Mountains are primarily coniferous trees. So we've got Doug fir and redwood, where is on the Diablo Range on the east mountains, we've got gray pine and valley oak. So very, very different, much drier, much warmer place. And as a result, the birds are very different. This is yet another way of looking at the area from a 10,000-foot view. And what we're seeing here are these different colored eyedroppers. And these droppers come in different colors. And if you look on the right, you'll see a code. The deep orange and red ones are the ones that have the greatest number of species, whereas the orange and yellow and green and blue have fewer and fewer species at each location. Gray, unfortunately, has no species logged from that area. So what this tells us is that the coast and the bay are really rich with diversity, whereas the urban areas are kind of frosty blue, meaning there's less biodiversity there as far as avian diversity. And you can also tell that there are a lot of hotspots that go along the main roads. Highway 130 up and over Mount Hamilton. Lots and lots of checklists there, but if you look north or south of Highway 130, you'll see that there's nothing reported from there. There's no hotspots available for people to go to. Anyway, so looking at our county again, now I'm going to take you to a few of the actual spots and talk about the birds that can be found there. I guess I'll pause for a moment and see if anybody has any questions at the moment, because this is a good place for me to take a sip of water.
Everybody's muted, so you can unmute
Okay.
yourself and ask questions.
Could I get a little description of partially accessible?
partially accessible. That would likely mean a level trail, but likely to be hard packed. So it may not be wheelchair compatible, but it's certainly walker compatible. It's an easy level walk. And also, this park I'm going to talk about has a variety of habitats in it. Some areas are very accessible and others are not.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay. All right, great. So Santa Teresa Park, it's dead center. It's south of, let's see, I think when I say this is South County. So very north end of South County, basically right on the border between the urban areas and the farmland. And looking at this map here, look down at number 1. We see the area I probably want to speak mostly about. 2 and 3 we'll get to in a moment. But if you enter from McKean and then find Fortini Avenue there, you'll be looking at that area where there's a little hiker icon there. Now, the place I would recommend, just because it is so level and such an easy but very beautiful walk, is the Calero Creek Trail. And if you look above that icon, you'll see that switchback trail that leads up and into the park central. I would not recommend that for everybody. In fact, I find that trail difficult, but nevertheless, it's a good place. But let's look at Calero Creek Trail. You can see here, it's unpaved, it's level, and it's just gorgeous. Right now, it's a little browner than it is in this picture, but this is typical oak savanna, wide open grassland, and beautiful chaparral hills off to the right, out of camera, and a lot of valley oak trees. So the trail takes you through an old orchard and back toward Henry Avenue. If you recall the map we were just looking at, we're walking to the left on that map. This is a great area for a number of birds, and I'll talk to you about those in a moment. This, however, is the Style Ranch trail that zigzags up the side of the hill. And if you're interested in wildflowers, this is definitely a place to look at, but you needn't hike up on this treacherous trail. You can look at the flowers from the very base of the trail, and you'll find wild poppies, you'll find fuchsia, columbine, you'll find California sage and hummingbird sage. It's just a beautiful place. Butterflies, of course, prevail here, and many, many special birds. Further up that trail, it opens up and becomes kind of a wind-swept grassy area with this gorgeous stone fence and this lone tree at the crest. You see, it's a very picturesque area. I do love that fence. It just seems like it belongs in Ireland or something. So this is still from that wide open grassy area. It takes some effort to get up there, but the other part of the park, which is very easy to navigate, is from Bernal Avenue. So you drive in there, it's a drive uphill, but once you get there, the trail is, a lot of it is level. So you can go to the left or the right up here and go through some beautiful oak savanna habitat. The view of the open area behind that previous picture, you can see the hills, the Santa Cruz Mountains in the distance. And some of the birds that love this park are the grasshopper sparrow, which are easier to hear than to see. They really do sound like insects, very buzzy and very high-pitched. This is a difficult bird to watch because it is quite shy. But if you have reasonable hearing, you might be able to hear it that way. Horned lark loves rocky outcroppings in this windswept portion of the park. And the lark sparrow, again, all these birds like the open grassy hillsides. This is probably one of the prettiest sparrows we have, very, very fancy-faced, and a beautiful, complicated song. Rufous crowned sparrow is a ground-loving sparrow. I misspelled Rufus there. And you'll find this among the rocks and Artemisia on the slopey hillsides along that Calero Creek Trail, usually. The one that's level that goes through the orchard and all. So that's one location I really, really enjoy. In South County, Coyote Valley That's definitely well within the South County zone. And if you see Highway 101 there from Bailey, taking Bailey to the west, and then you can go south on Santa Teresa Avenue, and you will eventually come to Palm Road. It leads you into Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve. Now this area is varied as well. It's got a hilly section and has a nice level section too. So this is the entrance of the park, and these rocks here have had rock wren in the trees, have had golden eagle. Now this is a view from above the trail, but that level trail down there splits apart and goes straight ahead, and then it goes off to the left. And a good portion of this is really nicely level. And you'll find some great birds here. It's filled with these wide open grassy areas and kind of semi-vegetated mountains. If you do hike up into the hills, you get a fabulous view of the valley below. And eventually, you'll get into an area that's really forested like this. In these areas, in this park, no matter what part of the park you're in, the hilly section or the level section, you have the possibility of seeing Swainson's hawk, which comes in a light morph and a dark morph. And this bird has a remarkable migration. It flies all the way from Argentina. It's one of the longest raptor migrations on record. So that's thousands of miles from Argentina all the way up here, all the way to Canada. And it really prefers grassland and farmland where it feeds primarily on crickets, large meaty crickets like Jerusalem cricket and grasshoppers and things of that sort. So it's a long-winged bird that comes here only in the spring and summer to breed. And in fact, it was absent as a breeder in Santa Clara County for more than 80 years. And about a decade ago, it showed up and was breeding along Coyote Creek. So it comes in light morph, dark morph, and young morph. So this is a fledgling here, or nestling rather. And it looks like it's going to grow up to be a dark morph. Dark morph and light morph are basically like blonde or brunette. One is probably recessive, but there really is nothing more to it than that, and it's difficult to predict. Offspring could be both light or dark or intermediate, like our red tails, in fact. But this bird breeds along the creek and is only a sparse breeder now, but they breed in Gilroy, they breed in Coyote Valley, and we see them passing through elsewhere in the county, but this is the only two areas where we've known them to breed. If you're lucky, you might find prairie falcon flying overhead, and this is a bird that's more common in the south than it is in the north. It's a fast-moving, large falcon, and it's quite regular in Coyote Valley. And I think I mentioned rock wren as a possibility. The Coyote Valley Open Space Preserve, sometimes rock wren can be seen just from the parking lot. And the famous yellow-billed magpie, which is, like I said, one of two endemic species of bird in our state. It's a relative of the crow and the raven and all the jays, but it's the only one that's got a yellow bill. Here's a tricolored blackbird. If you've seen red-winged blackbirds, this is going to look very similar, except that edge there of light color is actually white, not yellow. So if you see a white margined red-winged blackbird, you may be looking at a tricolored blackbird. And this, again, is a rare bird. It's declining in numbers, and it only lives in California and Oregon. And really, most of them live in California. So there's a strange thing that you become aware of as you look more and more at birds. These birds look at first just like yellow margined red-winged blackbirds, but in fact, they're blacker. The black is sort of a shiny blue-black as opposed to kind of a dullish grayish black of the red-winged blackbird. And the wings are longer, so it actually flies a little bit different, and it certainly sounds different. But these are the kinds of things we all use as birders to tell these these similar birds apart. One of my favorite birds of all time is the mountain bluebird. Now we've seen western bluebirds with the reddish breast and a little bit of red on the back. The mountain bluebird is entirely sky blue. It's a wonderful looking bird, and this photograph doesn't do it justice. It's far bluer than this in wildlife, in real life. And like I pointed out with the tricolored blackbirds, this bird has got longer wings than the western bluebird. So it actually flies a little bit different. It's more wafty, more butterfly-like when it flies. This bird really favors wide open rangelands. So less the marshes, less the freshwater areas, less the reedy fields that you might find western bluebirds in, or red-winged blackbirds. This bird likes dry, wide open, flat or rolling hills of the rangelands. Finally, we're in the East Hills, Joseph D. Grant County Park. So you can either hike a short distance or a long distance. And there are flush and pit toilets, and again, partially accessible, meaning some areas are paved and some areas are not, but still believe that there are plenty of areas that make safe travel for anybody with mobility issues. So you see there, it's in the East Hills. And you can come up from Quimby, which is a steep, windy road, and then get yourself to the main entrance, which is 1, or go to the lake, which is number 2. So Joseph D. Grant County Park has got a gorgeous old historic ranch house, which is supposedly haunted. I've been in it once. I didn't see any ghosts. And but it's usually closed. You can still walk around it. You can peek in the windows, and you can bird these grounds. And that on the left, there's a famous rose garden, which is very beautiful and sometimes attracts good rare birds. But there are lots of level trails here that you can go as far as you want and come back without having to do a lot of hills. I've even cycled this trail very comfortably. So this trail, you're likely to find a bunch of birds, including chipping sparrow, western meadowlark, some of the birds I'll show you in a moment. Hotel trail, from the ranch house, you're likely to be able to see Mount Hamilton in the distance. And in the wintertime, it often gets snow, and sometimes they close that road leading up there. Beyond it, of course, is the observatory. That's much higher. I think you can see the observatory there at the very top. The lake, which is number 2 on that map, is the area that stretches, that's right across the street, right across the highway. You can't walk around this entire lake, but you can go to the end, and you can choose to do hilly trails after that, or you could turn around and back out. The trail leading to the end is level and smooth and paved, not paved, sorry, hard packed. Very comfortable walk and great views of the waterfowl. And in this area, you're likely to find a lot of the dried twisted live oak trees, and bald eagle can be found here. They've nested here, as well as golden eagle and white-tailed kite, prairie falcon, peregrine falcon, merlin, sharp-shinned hawk, Cooper's hawk. This lake, the area around it, is a great place for raptors. I forgot to mention northern harrier too. Many, many species can be found here. This is my wife cricket. We're back near the ranch house, at the head of the hotel trail. This area right now is very beautiful. We're in late spring, early summer now, so it's still very green, at least the trees. And it's a lovely walk, well worth the time. And it was one of the favorite places for my class that I taught for 21 years at Palo Alto Adult School. They always wanted to go back to Grant Park. They love birding around the ranch house. Here we're probably looking for a quail in the undergrowth there. So those trips were wonderful. We always had picnics together afterward and talk about what we'd seen and make plans for future trips. Again, yellow-billed magpie can be found here. And this truly is a special bird. If you remember, we had avian influenza a while back, H1N1, I believe. And for some reason, the corvids, the crows, the jays, and the magpies really suffered. They really did not fare well against that virus. And to be honest, we almost lost the yellow-billed magpie as a species in our state. The numbers were plummeting as a result of that avian influenza. Thankfully, the numbers have rebounded and we're doing quite well. There's not up to where they were before, but I think they're much better. And you're pretty well guaranteed to find this species up in the Grant Park area. And it really is a stunning animal. Lawrence's goldfinch is a rare species here, and to my eye, it's the prettiest of our 3 goldfinch species. It's also the rarest and hardest to find. It really likes blue oak, so areas where there's a lot of blue oak, you're more likely to come across this species. But they do like that rose garden, and they like the water fountain there where they congregate and bathe and drink. Is a really handsome bird. Unusual coloration. I think the patterning is peculiar. That spot of yellow on the breast, just a soft transition to the gray. It's just a wonderful bird. It has one of the most complicated songs of all of our songbirds and is an incredible mimic, even better than a northern mockingbird. But the imitations that it makes are pushed together so tightly that there's no space in between them. It's just one bird after another. It's remarkable that it can do this, but it makes it difficult for someone to understand what it's saying because you're saying to yourself, American robin, killdeer, California thrasher, spotted towhee, western wood pewee. It repeats these songs, it imitates these songs, one right after the other, and it's really something marvelous. This is the female without the black face. And a super rare bird that showed up just recently at Grant Park, maybe about 6 years ago, I think it showed up for the first time at Grant Park. And this is a bird of the Southwest. It's very easy to find it in Arizona and Texas and New Mexico, where it tends to like arid, kind of scrubby areas with short, thorny bushes and things. For some reason, this male showed up. It's a migrant. So it has shown up year after year after year at Grant Park along that hotel trail. And a few years prior to that, about 15 years ago, we had never had one in the county. And now we have one, at least one every year. In fact, we had 2 last month, one at Grant Park and one at Sunnyvale Baylands Park. Which says to me that the bird's range is expanding, and that's probably a response to climate change. And unfortunately, we can see these changes happening in real time. In a span of 10 years, we're noticing that nesting season is becoming earlier and earlier, and the winter season is becoming shorter and shorter as far as the birds are concerned. So it's very alarming. Here's the female, which, as far as I know, we have not yet seen a female in the county, but so there has not been any breeding. But it sure seems like it wants to breed because it's here in the right season and it's singing. So hopefully we'll get that. East Hills, the Smith Creek Fire Station. This is probably not a trail that I would recommend unless you really feel like exerting yourself. This is up Mount Hamilton Road on the very edge of Joseph T. Grant County Park. And it takes you through a really wonderful riparian wonderland. So this area is frequently visited by birders in early spring, hoping to intercept some birds coming from the south to breed up here or simply to pass through. And it's lovely. The creek does cross the trail, so if anyone does feel like going here, you might get your feet wet if the water is running. I go here pretty much every year in search of phainopepla, which is a bird that lives its entire life cycle in mistletoe. So here's the female phainopepla. And it doesn't have a common name. This is the genus and the common name. But It loves mistletoe. In fact, it loves mistletoe so much that if you find mistletoe in an area like this live oak tree, no, probably this is valley oak, you're likely to find phainopepla. And if you find phainopepla, you're almost guaranteed to find mistletoe somewhere, because the way this works is the phainopepla eats the berries, poops out the berries. The berries are sticky and they cling to the branches of the trees. Then the mistletoe propagates and provides nesting sites, nesting material, and food and shelter for the phainopepla. So those two species really rely on each other. The trees may not be so happy that the clumps of mistletoe are growing in numbers, but the phainopepla certainly is, and so is the mistletoe. In the same area, and sometimes visible right from the road, without even venturing deep into the woodland, hermit warbler, my very favorite local warbler. It's got an entirely yellow face, a black throat, and a little bit of black on the crown. It's just a lovely, lovely bird. Hammond's flycatcher, less dramatically colored, but rare. And this is an example of a bird that just passes through briefly on its way farther north. It breeds up in the mountains, but it passes through the lower elevations of our foothills and will continue on its journey. Then once again, it'll fly through the area on its way south back to Central America. Nashville warbler is the same story. It breeds in the Sierra, but it passes through our area in both spring and in fall. So these are called pass-through birds, and birders as a culture gets kind of crazy in spring and fall because birds are moving all the way through, and we want to find them before they disappear. Sometimes they're present in this area for a day or two, and then they continue their journey. So it can be a real challenge to intercept them, but that's sort of what birders do. San Antonio Valley, another place that I love to visit. This is way on the east side of the East Hills, in the valley up and over Mount Hamilton. Now, we were just at number 3 a moment ago, and now we've crossed the observatory and we're in the neighboring valley, San Antonio Valley. Now, if you recall, several years ago, there was a devastating fire up at Mount Hamilton, and it continued into the San Antonio Valley and destroyed much of the plant life there. Thankfully, a lot of these trees are kind of fire, I guess, resistant, and they've started to come back. But these are the pictures I found first in my collection, and I like to show them because if you do go to this area, you'll see that it looks very different now. But it was heartbreaking to see the mountains kind of, ashen like this on the way down into the San Antonio Valley. But as you got lower and lower, you would start to see hints of regeneration. The ground cover was slowly coming back. A lot of the trees had been burned, but there was new sprouts coming up beside. These are all gray pines here. And there's a lot of damage here, but I'm happy to say that it's coming back. And it's looking really nice. This is at the very southern end of San Antonio Valley. We're basically in the lower portion of that road now. And you can see it's regenerating. It's becoming nice and green. Now this area is another great spot for Lawrence's goldfinch because it likes dry areas. It likes blue oak, and there's a lot of both of those conditions in San Antonio Valley. Lewis's woodpecker, probably every birder's prize sighting is a Lewis's woodpecker. It's a wonderful fly-catching woodpecker with iridescent green and pink and gray. So it's just a peculiar color combination. And if you know anything about woodpeckers, you know many of them fly with a sort of up and down motion that's called undulating flight. The Lewis's woodpecker doesn't do that. It flies straight, much more like a crow. In fact, this bird is so dark, when seen at a distance, it looks like a crow. But it loves the San Antonio Valley, and it loves the valley oaks that can be found there. And it apparently loves the dry conditions. Now, if you continue on that San Antonio Valley Road north, you get to the junction with Del Puerto Canyon Road and you make a right there and you find more fire damage, but again, you find regeneration, regrowth. And if you're very lucky, you might come across a greater roadrunner, which nests in this area and seems to like that kind of burned, damaged habitat. And similarly, you might find Bell's sparrow, which is a rare bird for our county and found in a unique clump of plants, chamise and coyote brush. So in summary, there are lots of places that you could go on your own with a little bit of study. You can select any of these places, see if they're suitable for your abilities. You can learn about the birds that can be found there. You'll find interactive maps to help you know where to go, give you recommendations on where to park and whether there's a fee and all of that. You can get lots of information there, and I wanted to point out that of those 5 zones, the Sunnyvale Baylands Park and Eulestack and Sanborn Park are places I didn't talk about, but they're perfectly suitable for anyone, and they're pretty easy to navigate. Joseph D. Grant Park and Santa Teresa Park, you know, there are parts of it that are rugged and then parts that are really navigable and easy, so don't require a lot of energy and everything. Sunnyvale Baylands Park, for example, here, very level, tons of trees, this nice boardwalk which crosses a shallow creek. This is right in downtown Sunnyvale, close to the bay, so you have the benefit of ducks and geese that gather here on the lawn, or the seasonal wetland that's there in the distance. You can see the distant hills. You'll find raptors, you'll find warblers in the trees above the trail. It's a wonderful spot for birds. We lead field trips there all the time. And Eulestack Natural Area, this is a place that was originally slated to become a golf course. And then some advocates for nature decided, no, let's see if we can get the city to agree to turn it into a wildlife area. And that's exactly what they did. So there was a staff of volunteers that planted native plants. They created new trails to crisscross the different habitats. There's a native garden. There are a lot of non-native eucalyptus trees, but the place is filled with birds, and it's right near the Levi Stadium. You wouldn't believe how active this place is. In fact, some of the rarest birds in our county have shown up at this wonderful small wilderness area. And then finally, Sanborn Park. Clearly areas that are rugged, but also areas that are really peaceful and easy to navigate. I love Sanborn Park. And some of our uncommon species like Pacific wren can be found here. Or you could join one of our field trips. Like I said, we've got 180 plus of field trips every year. And I'm sure I'll be leading more trips with Avenidas so that everybody will know each other. But if you feel bold and want to meet some new people and learn a little bit more about birds from one of our docents or one of our field trip leaders, it's a great way to do it, because there's a lot of great birding in Santa Clara County. So I wanted to thank you for listening to me, and if you have any questions, I'll go ahead and take them right now.
It's amazing. Thank you so much, Matthew.
Yeah.
Anyone, if you have a question, please unmute yourself.
Anybody
and
at
ask
all.
questions.
When are we scheduled for another Avenidas trip? Do we have one set up for fall, maybe?
I'm sure. Let's see. I don't have that right in my head, but
So,
Matt, I have a quick question. I walk and I use that Merlin guide, which
Yep.
tells me birds that are around me. I can't find them. I can pick up 15 walking from my house to the creek and back, and I rarely see more than 2 of them. I mean, how do you, as a bird watcher, how do you find out where those birds are? Because it drives
So
me crazy to see
you're hearing them, and Merlin is hearing them.
wonderful birds somewhere else, but I can't see it.
Yeah. So it's a trick. You know, it takes a while to get skilled with the binoculars. To be honest, I probably do 95% of my birding with my ears. So I'm not always searching for the bird unless I hear something that I don't recognize. Then I really do look for it. And it's a trick. I usually stand still and watch for movement. I try to focus on where the sound is coming from and then watch that area for any movement. And chances are the bird that's making that call will move. They often do that after they call, and I'll be able to find it that way. But it does take a while. If you're looking for all the birds that you hear, you won't be walking very far because there's a lot of birds that are singing, and they're all a little tricky to find. But I'm glad you're using Merlin. That's a fantastic app. And
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
and are you able to hear the birds as well as Merlin?
Oh, yes. I
Okay,
mean,
great.
I hear them myself and I look down, what was it? So I generally, although I must say when I walk, I pick up, I don't hear because I'll hear maybe two-thirds of them. Some of them, I'm not sure if
Right.
it's a real call or, or some, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of birders, they have a range of sound that's difficult to hear. A lot of the higher frequencies are difficult to hear. My hearing is still pretty good, but I know as I get older, I'm going to lose some of the higher register. But I'm still able to hear a lot of the songs, and in fact, I'm happy with that because I think my eyesight is not as good as it used to be. But anybody else have any
I have a
questions?
question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
How do you vet a sighting, particularly if there's no picture? I don't mean you or one of the employees or of your staff, but well, you wouldn't want one from me. But how do you vet the accuracy of that sighting?
Yeah, so the experience is helpful. I've been birding for 50 years, so I feel pretty confident when I say that I've seen something that I'm actually reporting the truth. But a certain amount of skepticism is always warranted when somebody reports something very rare. Like if I had reported that Siberian ruby throat, I'm sure people would have said, no, that couldn't possibly be. It doesn't show up here, but it did. It's proven. So you have to include a description, a good description, and one that acknowledges the fact that you know that this is uncommon or rare or surprising. And by doing that, you're letting the eBird reviewer, and we have a couple that review all the eBird reports here, and they'll look at your description, they'll look at where the bird was seen, they'll look at the checklist and see whether this is a reasonable time for it to be here. And it could be that they say we'd like a little bit more information, or did you consider this more common option? And then if you say, yes, I did consider that, and yes, I'm sure about it, then it's likely to get vetted. But even though it's a little daunting, a little intimidating for new birders, it's actually a really good thing because I guess, mean that the data is going to be good. And eBird is even more rigorous on their reviews than we are on the basic eBird mailing list. Anybody else? Oh, I think Carol, you're muted.
I am. About dogs, I know that I can take my dog to the duck pond
Yep,
and to the Baylands, but do some of the other parks also allow dogs?
some do. Yeah, for
And
sure.
it will say on the literature or
Yeah,
yeah,
we were very careful to include that on as many things as we could. The Eulestack place, for example, you can take your dog, but it has to be on a leash.
yeah. Well, I assume that. Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Thanks.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing more of you on the next time we do an Avenidas trip. That will likely be back at the wetlands, I imagine. It's always better if you're a new birder, and I'm not assuming that you're all new birders, but I don't know. If you are a new birder, it's best to go to a place like the Baylands or Shoreline Park or Charleston Slough or Shoreline Lake, a place with water and a place with wide open areas because those areas are likely to attract bigger, slower moving birds like ducks and geese and cormorants and grebes. Those birds are pretty easy to follow. Birds of prey are another good thing to look for. As you get used to those big birds and you get more talented with your binoculars or your spotting scope or your camera, then a trip to a wooded area is more appealing and more feasible because you're going to be a little bit better at finding birds. But no matter where you go, even if you start off by going to a woodland with lots of dense foliage, you're going to have a great time. There'll be wonderful bird sounds to hear. You'll see a bird whizzing across the trail. You might get lucky and see a woodpecker coming in and out of a nest hole. So don't be afraid to go to these wooded areas, even though the birding is a little bit more difficult there. But anyway, yeah, I hope you make use of the self-guided trips, have fun reading them, and pick out a place. And you can always send me an email if you have a question about it.
Well, thank you very much.
You're so
It was
welcome.
wonderful. Well,
Good,
you
good.
said this is one of first time presentation of yours, and I think I felt like I went to many places just now.
Well, I can't take credit for all the bird photography, but I can take credit for the scenery. And I
Beautiful
think some of those
pictures.
places are just plain gorgeous. In fact, a trip to Grant Park or San Antonio Valley, it feels like I'm hundreds and hundreds of miles away, but really I'm just 28 miles over the mountain, and that's it. It's not that far. You don't have to go very far to find a beautiful place like that. And even some of our urban parks, like Lake Cunningham or Lake Almaden, have got beautiful, easy birding trails to visit. And anyway, yeah. So I enjoyed doing this very much. I hope you had a good time and that you liked the presentation. And Kay, thank you for inviting me again.
Oh, thank you so much.
And look forward to talking to you again and doing another trip. So
Wonderful. All right. Thank
bye, everyone.
you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.